AI civic signals. So this is just kind of basically some thoughts on where we're all going with AI currently, because it is impossible to go to any kind of offsite or any conference without having at least one section on AI. I should say I'm absolutely thrilled that Paul led with not everything case study they had was using AI, because the vast majority of our data use cases don't. So I was very happy for him to say that. But I am going to talk about the bits where we are and sort of some signal viewing as to what's happening in the world. So my title, Director of Data and AI Ethics. Now, that a recent recipient of MSc, I literally got that 2 weeks ago. I'm still very much in the land of, look at me, my job title is now official for the first time. I reckon I've got about 2 weeks left before I can stop going on about my recent MSc, which I'm very pleased with. So, in terms of what I do, I kind of wear two hats. The whole ethical thing is very heavily rooted in our compliance and our approach to how we're using AI within our own organisation. But also it's a lot of what's happening in the world. What is everybody else doing? So in terms of describing that signal viewing, I put my CV into Copilot, obviously, first thing you do, to say, because I find these really uncomfortable, these what do you do, what's your name and where do you come from conversations, I find very awkward. So I asked it to describe in 5 words from my CV what it is I do. The first thing it did was give me 6 words, so to Paul's point earlier, it doesn't always get it right. Transforms data, strategy, ethics, leadership and communication. The second point about generative AI is that it is endlessly sycophantic. I mean, it was never going to see, slightly mediocre could do better. It likes to go with the positive, which is a theme we'll come back to. So in terms of what I am going to talk about, I will focus on generative AI. So earlier on, somebody talked about the incompetence of leaders. I can't remember who it was. There was definitely well, I didn't say it. Somebody else said there was incompetent leaders. I think that when the gods in local government and central government are talking about AI, they are generally talking about generative AI. They're not really talking about our old school machine learning or that stuff. So I am going to focus on that. I should also fess up to, I am not a local government expert. I have subject matter expert colleagues who I talk to. I'm the AI bit that cuts across them all. So if you need any specific answers on that, Stewie's your man. So we've come a long way in 3 years. If you think, so ChatGPT sort of launched November 22. So I'm going to use this as a 23, 24 and 25 where we're at. 22, we're kind of in the kitchen. We can see, we can get into ChatGPT, we can do stuff with it. We're kind of early days in the kitchen with some ingredients, terrified of giving anybody food poisoning, don't really know what's going on, standing back a little bit. This is all a bit scary. 24, we got a bit more, oh, all right, I get this. I can ask questions. I can kind of interact with this thing. 25, we're now, some organisations are really playing with it quite nicely. Others are like, no, I'm still in 24 land. I'm a bit scared of what I'm going to do with it. Now, you might see from that image, can you see on the pie, there's a finger. Now, you can see how it got there. It's read words and it's gone, he's really good. He's got lots of fingers and lots of pies. Loads of fingers and lots of pies. Fingers in pies is clearly good, people. No, fingers and pies. So I think this is a real analogy for where we are now, because when you correct it, then she looks a bit different. But I think it's a beautiful analogy for where we're all at in using this stuff. It's good. It's so much better than it was 3 years ago. If you want it to be brilliant, wait a bit longer. Still needs us to be in the mix to understand what it's going to do for us and how we're going to use it. So that means that there is different impacts on how organisations are adopting it. So there's some stats on adoption up to last year. So fully embracing AI, 20%, 28% of organisations. Selectively adopting AI for key use cases, about 40%. Minimal usage so far, 20%, no use at all. So we're not all in it. There's only, just under a third of organisations saying, yeah, we're in. And they're going to be the bigger organisations who've got the money to spend, let's face it. So what are some of the reasons for that? So 90% of organisations have seen their AI investments failing. That is because they've thought, AI is the answer. I'll get a piece of kit, I'll plug it in, and it will all work. It doesn't. That's why 90% of them fail. 72% quote AI as material risk. So that was only 12% in 2023. So with a lot of them citing reputational risk, they are getting it. There is value for it for me. But if I get it wrong, that is very bad for me. So it is now on organisations' risk register. So leaders are looking at it, even if they don't fully understand what it means yet. Most AI strategies fail for 3 reasons. This is a Reuters research. I should say the slides are available and there are links to all of the sources for all the statements that I make throughout this. So 3 reasons: unclear objectives. What are you trying to achieve? Not, I've got a sexy piece of kit, let's do something with it. Poor system integration and ignoring governance, checks and balances around it. This next one is very, very private sector, but it's worthy of note. So Meta facing the 1.2 billion fine over harmful AI ads. The point I'm making here is we're not all Meta, we're not going to get 1.2 billion fines. But the point was they were using automated decisioning to serve healthcare ads without checking who was going to get it. So it is the check what it is that you're doing. If you're using automated systems, don't just, crack on, it's all fine, it'll definitely be right. Fingers in pies. And this final one, Shopify was criticised for poor service through its automated system. So it gave an automated service, but it got into a doom loop where the user couldn't get out of it because the system didn't understand it had broken and it didn't know how, and there was no human to check that. So these are all private sector examples, but I use them because there is total read across to any service or any use that you're making within any public service, that all of these can apply in terms of thinking about what you're trying to achieve, making sure you've got the right checks and balances in place. Don't just go with whatever the machine tells you. So what are some good use cases? So main categories. I have to start with the traditional one, which is insight and forecasting, which is what Paul talked about in the main, using it to predict outcomes, validate drivers. So demand forecasting for public services, understanding who needs housing, transport, all that sort of where might there be fly tipping, so we need to have the right collection in place. So that is the traditional use that we've made most use of. In terms of the new Gen AI stuff, summarization and creation, so generating content from data. So this could be, you've got 27 different reports that give you a bit of something. You can use AI to say, create me one report. Just bring it all together, create me one. Give me a start point that I can then check. It doesn't have to be the end game, but it can summarize what you've got so far, as long as you've got a human in there. The second one, retrieval and knowledge access. So giving access to whatever that information you have is to other organizations. So it allows things like semantic search, by which I mean, natural language. Please tell me what the policy is for planning in my area. I haven't got a clue how to navigate it. It can do things like that by accessing the right information without having to create it all together and do a checklist. And that could be Q&A bots, planning, whatever it is, public-facing access to council services. So giving people access to your information. Ideation and strategy. Again, I love one of Paul's comments was, sometimes I sit at my desk thinking I haven't got a clue where to start. It's amazing for that. You can really go in there and say, I have got 30 years experience using data in local government. I'm having a brain block, and here's the things that I've done in the last 10 years. Give me some clues. And it is amazing what it can come up with. You'll ignore 40% of them, but it will give you a start point for somewhere to go next in terms of ideas of what happens next. Automation and efficiency, so streamlining repetitive tasks. I was reading this morning about a service called Extract, which is a trial going on with 4 local government authorities, which is basically turning a lot of planning applications, be that handwriting or handwritten maps or old-fashioned maps that they couldn't quite read, into digital assets so that it can go into a system for searching and for collation. So things like that, it is great for turning analog stuff into digital stuff to allow you to do something with afterwards. Personalization and citizen experience. So tailoring experiences to user context, be that personalized service recommendations. If you know what events are happening in a certain area and a certain audience within your authority is going to have different needs from others, you can personalize that. It may just be translation within an area, which is critical. But helping you make whatever knowledge you have available in a way that people can consume it easily. And then the final one, I don't think we're quite there yet, is robotics, which is the real sort of nascent. So service provision and delivery. You can imagine a world where you have drones going and picking up the rubbish, or you have automated vehicles doing that. That can come. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. The closest I've seen to it was that we had a recent company come in and give us a demo of a robot that was very entertaining and walked up and down the room. Not entirely sure what its purpose would be just yet, other than bringing you drinks when you sit next to the pool was all I could think of. But there is room for this kind of stuff. So these are the kind of generative AI use cases that organizations are making and getting value out of. So in terms of what we are focusing on now, there are the 6 kind of areas that we need to look at as an organisation, certainly at CACI. So there are the enablers, so people, and again, there was a comment earlier about education. It's a massive thing, and it's a big thing for all organisations, and everyone's at different stages with it, both as individuals and as organisations. Tech, I'm going to come back to process, business strategy and marketing. Business, you need to know what you're trying to achieve. So whatever your organisation strategy is, and I love the data strategy, all of you put into Copilot, what's a data strategy? It's very helpful. It'll tell you in bite-sized chunks. And then how you communicate what you're doing to your citizens and to your communities. And then where is it going next? So they're the 6 areas that we are focusing on. You're at a Snowflake conference. I'm willing to bet you know quite a lot about tech and data. So I'm going to focus mostly on the process and governance compliance point, which is more my area. And some external views, just things that are happening out in the outside world that are interesting to give us some clues as to where things are going next. So in terms of principles, are you aware of your UK government playbook, AI playbook? It was a great read. It was 160 pages. I confess I didn't read it all. But I did look at the principles. So I would love to know, I love the language of these. You know what AI is and what its limitations are. And that's it, the end, you're all good. You use AI lawfully, ethically and responsibly. You know how to use AI securely. You have meaningful human control at the right stages. I mean, I'm sure all of these are true for all of you in all of your organisations. You understand how to manage the full AI lifecycle. You use the right tool for the job. You are open and collaborative. Again, I like the language here. Our principles are all we are very this, and we all work together. We're all very we. This is very you will do as you're told. It feels very UK central government. You work with commercial colleagues from the start, know what your purpose is. You have the skills and expertise. Arguably not yet. And you use these principles alongside your organisation's policies. They're a great set of principles, actually. They're really well written in terms of how you should use AI. I can imagine they'll take some time to adopt because they're quite difficult for everybody to say that all of those things are true. I will focus on AI lawfully, ethically and responsibly. So those 3 words, we'll start with lawful. Again, I'm willing to bet you're all familiar with this set of legislation. We had GDPR in 2018. At the same time, we in the UK decided to generate our own Data Protection Act 2018. When Brexit came, we read across GDPR into UK GDPR, exactly the same. And then sometime in the noughties, we created some legislation around email because we just invented email and we didn't know how to put it in the Data Protection Act. So when the Data Use and Access Bill came along, it basically brought all those things together. So it's been kind of described as a bug fix or an expansion pack for all of that legislation. And the reason I draw attention to this is because it is so central to most of our use cases for AI, which is in application mostly to individuals. So we need to understand how we're impacting individuals. But I would also include, in terms of lawful, the EU AI Act. Now, I know that we are not beholden to the EU AI Act, but it has some good principles and some good categorizations of activity that are really helpful to help you think about what it is that you're doing and how what you're doing is impacting your citizen base in terms of risk categories and in terms of ethical principles as to how to review your work. In the UK currently, the ICO, for you guys, primarily the ICO, we also have the other authorities. So the current legislation in the UK just says the existing regulators can give you a view as to how to interpret all the legislation. Will that stay the same? Don't know. There's very recently, in the last 6 months or so, been a private members bill which is looking for a regulation around AI which seeks things like, in the same way as you have to have a data protection officer, you would have to have an AI protection officer, things like that. That's going through. Will it go through? I've no idea. It won't go through in the short term, but it's a kind of signal. These are the sorts of things that are happening. The counter signal to that is that in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it was in October, the government through DCIT launched the AI Growth Lab, which is basically a sandbox to say you can play with AI techniques with some relaxation of law in that context. What that relaxation of law will need some viewing, but it's sort of, they're 2 different things. One's saying innovate, do loads of things, it's really sexy. The other's saying protect. So we've got this sort of world to navigate. And that's where we then get into our ethical principles. So in terms of the ethical approach, there are 7 principles that the EU AI Act talks about. The central thing being privacy and data governance. That's why I started with all the legislation around privacy. So, and going around them, accountability, make sure you know who is responsible for what. Don't just play around with it. You're accountable for whatever you do. Make sure that you have good kit that people aren't going to hack. human agency and insight, oversight, have a body in the mix. It's not good enough to just have a tool making decisions for you. Societal and environmental well-being. There was a stat that we had in our organisation where in a 3-month period, we had 100,000 prompts to Microsoft Copilot interacting with it. We were like, that's amazing. We're getting really good take-up. And then I was like, how many reservoirs have we just emptied with all of those questions? So be aware of what it is you're doing. Diversity, non-discrimination and fairness. Again, that's not new news. That's been a focus for a while in existing legislation. And transparency and explainability. Make sure it's obvious to people what you are doing with their data. They're the European ones. The UK government has called out and slightly reworded. So accountability and governance, prove to me you know what you're doing. Tech robustness and safety is still there. Human oversight is more focused on contestability and redress. So if people have got an issue with what you're doing, give them a route to say so and to have some sort of means of redress. We're not obviously so worried about the environment. We're not worried about diversity and discrimination, but we do want to be fair. Are those things together? One would hope. And appropriate transparency and explainability, which I think is a nod to our government's real push for innovation and use. So we don't want to tie people up in bureaucracy, and the need to stay adequate to the European GDPR laws so that we can still interact with them as a body. So what that means from a very practical perspective in terms of explainability and the focus that we have on it is being very clear about what your purpose is and what you're trying to achieve, and what you're not with any AI approach. Be very clear who is making decisions at which point in any model build, who's accountable for what, and where the human is. Because you could just say at the end of a 10-step process, someone says, yeah, that's fine. That's probably not enough. You need to say, who's checking the data was okay? Who's checking the model was okay? Who's checking the deployment was okay? You need every step to check that. What are you building with what data, using which techniques, and how are you deploying it? To where? Where are the risks? Now, it's interesting that as I wrote this, I read this back, what's implicit to me. So where are the risks? What are the categories? Might you have misinformation? Might you be a privacy breach? Might there not be security for, it could be commercial or individual, reputational bias, hallucinations, vulnerable people. And the obvious thing there, which I haven't written down, but is obvious, and what are your mitigations for them? So you've seen your risk, how do you mitigate them? And then who's going to keep checking it? Once you've built something, don't just ignore it and let it run. Someone should be monitoring it. And then I think the point at the end, in terms of the residual risk, there will always be something that there still has a risk. You just have to, that's fine, as long as you know what that risk is, and that you're comfortable that they're acceptable risks. So that's lawful and ethical. In terms of responsible, I would just say, in terms of your approach to your ethicals, you have a moral compass. You need to work out within your own organisation what is okay and what's not. So you have that in the context of what the law is telling you. And then, most importantly, with your audience in mind, centering who is on the receiving end of whatever it is that you're doing. So start with them and make sure that your activities are ethical and lawful. So that I've talked a lot about what organisations are doing, but it's as important, if not more important, to think about what are your end users thinking and talking about. So this is a survey that we hold called Voice of the Nation. Other surveys are available. Ours is just a bit better. And this was talking about asking them, thinking about your experiences with national and local public services that support or represent you. Which of the following do you have the highest levels of trust in? So on the left, the highest, we trust that the fire and rescue are going to turn up if there's a fire. We trust the NHS are going to sort it out if there's an emergency. Probably unsurprisingly, on the far right, we are not very trusting of our politicians. And quite possibly, and central government, quite possibly local government has got wrapped up in that in terms of a trust score, as it's probably tarnished with the central government score. But when you dig more into that, we ask, okay, so what are the things that they are worried about? What are the harms that consumers are scared of? So one is creativity. We'll lose the ability to think for ourselves. We're worried that you won't be thinking about what you're doing for us. So demonstrate to us that you're thinking about how the service that you're giving us is impacting us. We're scared of misinformation, be that overt scams and lying, but also just I don't know what to trust. I don't know what to look at. So you need to be big on how you're citing why the information you're giving is right. Discrimination and dignity speaks for itself. Don't make me a number, I'm a person. Treat me as such, treat me accordingly. Health and well-being. So there's a lot of anxiety about AI in the world. Please don't just put that in front of me. I don't understand it. I don't know how to use it. I'm terrified of it. And there's also a big underlying thing. I'm scared it will take my job. Participation, don't make me talk to a machine, I need to talk to people, don't isolate me. I need to know that I'm interacting with other people, not just machines. Privacy has been around for a while, and that came up as a big fear. I don't know what you're going to use about me. And also what emerged was a big fear of who's watching the people in charge. We're a bit scared of what they're doing with these tools, be that within our own country or across state boundaries, actors. So that's their fear factor. And then I'll just end on some just interesting stuff, again, looking at signals that are out there and what's happening out there. So the first one is in 2002 when ChatGPT emerged. So the green at the top is human-generated articles on the internet, and the yellow is AI-generated articles on the internet. And last year, AI-generated articles overtook human ones. It's just starting to stabilize, which you would like to think means that people are thinking, do you know what? Those machines are not writing good stuff. I need people. We need people creativity, not just machine creativity. Second one is, this is Sam Altman at a Snowflake conference actually, talking about if you'd have asked people 5 years ago if a ChatGPT was a human being, had achieved artificial general intelligence, they'd have said yes. So there's no point us measuring whether it's a real human being or not. It's just follow its progress and work out how we interact with it. There is no point in time where we say it has now achieved artificial general intelligence, meaning passed the Turing test and is equivalent to a human being. It is just going to be an ongoing just conversation about how it interacts with us. The third, in that context, this is a picture of a guy called Adam Rain. You may have heard of him. So he took his own life over the summer because after months of conversations with ChatGPT, who was helping him to describing his mental health issues, offering to help him write a suicide letter to his parents, being sycophantic, supportive, helpful, not safe. So that's just an awareness of how human it has become and how the younger generation do believe that it is real. That said, there are new scientist is currently positing, is this an AI bubble? Is it going to disappear? There's not going to be much use for it. I can't see that, but I can see a lot of startups with lots of tools disappearing over the next few years. It'll be we'll land with some core functions. This one was interesting for me. So I don't know if you have seen people who don't turn up to meetings online, but just send an AI note taker. There's a statistic that says 75% of people do that. I don't believe the statistic. It was put out by a manufacturer of AI note takers, unsurprisingly. I strongly suspect what it means is 75% of people have been to a meeting where a note taker has been used. That I entirely believe. Which again, I would feed into my next point, which is beware AI junk. So the analogy with junk food is if you go to a meeting and just take notes, let the machine take notes for it, you get some words, you get some summary, you get some calories, but they're not very good for you and you've got no nutritional value out of it and you haven't learned anything. So it's not a substitute. You have to turn up and invest and engage with what information is out there, not just expect AI to tell you. And with that, the quality of the information that it's getting. So I think guys like Gartner are getting cute to, I'm not going to have my content out there for these engines to just use. So they're starting to get cute to hiding their knowledge, their quality knowledge behind firewalls and protecting their IP, which means that the quality of the information and the advice that you'll be given will deteriorate over time. So it kind of will come back to people. And that's my final point on people. This is a phlebotomist. According to a Forbes survey, this is the safest job from AI in the world. Because it's the one thing that they definitely can't do. So if you want to retrain, it's phlebotomy for you. And that's it. Thank you.